Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome to all of our Facebook Live people who are joining us live in the studio and also all of our podcast listeners. Today we have a really epic podcast and a beautiful interview with Ranetha Perera, who is an intimacy and confidence coach for both men and women. She helps them to move from stuck and uncertain, and so that they can step into their radiance and confidence so that they can have better relationships with themselves and others. So today we're going to be talking all about how to turn up the heat on intimacy. So we're going to dive into self-intimacy as well as intimacy in your relationships, polyamory and monogamous relationships. So we're getting into all of the things. So super excited to have you on here. So thank you so much for joining us.
My goodness, I'm so glad and I'm so excited to be on here. So thank you so much for inviting me.
You're so welcome. You're doing amazing work. And I just think it is something that people are more readily available to hear. And it's becoming more acceptable and open to talk about in the public forum. And I really love that you're bringing this to the forefront. So super excited to have you here.
So exciting.
Cool. So I always start my podcast with our rapid inspiration question. So can you first share with us, inspire us with what your superpower is?
What my superpower is what I've been told, and what I love being known for is actually being able to see people's highest self and like the highest version of themselves. So when I'm working with people, when I'm around people, it's like, okay, having that as the bar. And even when people are giving me excuses, it's like, no, I can see that, like, it's kind of like, you're better than this. Let's get you back up to that level.
Beautiful. Love that.
Yeah.
And what is your favorite quote or mantra at the moment?
It comes from a book by Carolyn Elliott, Existential Kink, having is evidence of wanting. Have you heard of that before?
No,
it's like, it's more in the sense, if you haven't read the book Existential Kink, I highly recommend it. It's an excellent book. It's more on the basis of like everything in your life you've created, and whatever you have like in front of you, your partnerships, your relationships, where you live, how you go about life, it's like something that you want. And it's really powerful to know that even the things that you don't necessarily want, you've created, and it's something that you want unconsciously. So it's like taking responsibility and like that radical knowing of like, wow, I've powerfully created this unconsciously. And if I don't like it, what do I want instead consciously?
Yeah, beautiful. It sounds, the title of the book sounds like a kinky, sexy book, but it sounds like a self-development sort of. It's
a self-development book, but it's more in the sense of like, you know, the kinks of people have all these kinks of like, oh, I want to make $1 million, but the self-sabotage, it's like, oh,
those kinks,
like,
okay.
calling up those kinks, but like creating them as things and just consciously going, oh, it's things that I've created, and giving the power back instead of going, oh, I'm so not good enough, I'm not worthy enough, going, wow, yeah, I really get off on that. And then going, okay, like transmuting it and being okay with it and giving that time, like space in it, and then going into what am I actually wanting to create and how can I give that energy in that life? So it's a phenomenal book.
I have not read that one, so I'll have to look it up. And who or what is inspiring you at the moment?
I think right now there's a myriad of people around me that are inspiring me and doing some cool things. One of my friends is, I have a few friends actually that are creating some big projects around the world, supporting women thriving, supporting women that are struggling. So that's what's really inspiring me. That's, to keep going.
Amazing, beautiful. Well, I would love to hear more about your story and how you came to be an intimacy and confidence coach.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, because if you knew me 5 or 6 years ago, this is not where I would ever think I would be. So my background is very corporate. I used to be a chartered accountant and then moved into the world of, I was an international talent acquisition business partner. So I worked in billion-dollar businesses, and so very different to where I'm at now. I loved, so one of my strengths was always, when I was in teams, always having everyone feeling really uplifted and feeling really great about themselves, and having like connecting all the teams so that they would be so, I guess, efficient working together, but because they felt so great about themselves. And like, I just woke up being like, this is not where I want to be. Like in one of my jobs, I think one of my middle jobs, I was just in the space of working 80 hours a week, and I'd gained 20 kilos and I was so unhappy. But like, to the outside world, I had my shit together and I was living the dream life because I was being flown everywhere. And, you know, they would see my social media, or they would hear about my stories about working with these big clients like BMW or Coles or whatever, and going to these bars and like, you know, wineries, because we were always schmoozing, and it was a very work hard, play hard company. And internally, I was just feeling like a failure, and my life was work, and I was dating someone from work, and it was like Mr. Personality, and that was going not great. Like that ended, and I was like, what am I doing with my life? And one of my friends invited me to a self-development evening, and I went because over the week she had just changed. She had just shifted completely from being this kind of really quiet person to really stand, like her shoulders were back and she was standing up tall and she was able to speak really confidently, really clear. I was like, what has happened to you? Who have you become? Whatever you're having, I want some. So when she invited me, I was just, it was kind of like a, who are these people kind of scenario. And I went down the rabbit hole. And when I started, it was all about me. And, you know, I really loved the space of clearing up my own stories and my own things. And when I was learning things, I was still teaching everyone in my team and being able to expand into supporting them grow. And there was a point where I was like, this isn't, like, I can only do so much. And I want to be doing, like, I was like, after that job, I moved into a job where I was paid like 30K more. I worked 9 to 4. It was so flexible and going, like, you know, I was traveling so much and it was so great. And I was just like, this is not what I want to be doing. I want to really help people thrive. And there's like, I was still in a box. Mm-hmm. So that's when I decided to move out of the corporate space and kind of step into my own. And at the start, I was working with women that were wanting to move out of the corporate world and into entrepreneurship. And, you know, because I came from such a structured background, I was able to really help them. But then it became this whole, a lot of people kept talking to me about communication and breakdowns in their relationships and around boundaries. And because my journey has been from mindset and self-development, but then I went into the world of Tantra and embodiment and explored kink. And then I've loved using maps and models like astrology and human design. Like that kind of accidentally happened. So for a long time, I was like, I don't do relationships. I would used to send people, but then they would come back to me because of the structure and like the solidity, the way that I hold people in like that solid way. So it kind of happened organically. And then I went, actually, I really love supporting people in their relationships and having them thrive. And my big piece was self-love for a long time, and going under the basis of everything I do around intimacy and confidence, it's that self-love piece and like connection to self. So yeah, that's how I really got started. It was kind of by accident, as everything happens, and just going with the path of going, this is what lights me up and this is what brings me joy, and this is where I know I can support other people thriving. And seeing people thrive over and over again, I'm like,
yeah. When you've been called to something, the path opens up for you, but it still takes a lot of courage. So kudos to you to be able to leave. Like, it sounded like you had an amazing corporate job, like with good hours and great pay. So that would have been really, really hard. And that would have taken a lot of confidence on your behalf to understand and know yourself enough to be able to say, no, I know where my higher self is and it's not here, and to be able to step into that. So congratulations, because that's huge.
Thank you.
It really is. Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So moving on to intimacy, how do you define intimacy to start with?
A lot of people define it when people come to me, they define it as like, I have terrible intimacy with my partner. And like, I go, what is intimacy to you? And generally what people say is it's about the sex. Their sex life is not great. And it's like, my experience and what I define as intimacy is every moment when you're connecting with another person. So for instance, like this moment that we're on this podcast, there's an intimacy connection between us because we're having this deep connection, we're having this conversation. It's everything from conversations in the kitchen to in the bedroom. It's like all of it. I joke that when I'm going on like to coffee with one of my housemates or one of my housemates' partners, I'm like, oh, we're going on a date. And claiming that word is like, yeah, it's an intimate moment and every moment is a date. And I'm not looking to be sexual with someone, but it's this connection of like, that's what we're doing. That's what we're like, there's this relationship. There's me, there's the other person, and there's like the intimate connection of like the energetics of both of us.
Totally. And just being completely present with that person. I do think that the word intimacy is, you know, your brain does go to intimate sexual relationships with people or being like really, really connected and really close. And that can happen on different forums.
Totally.
But yeah, just seeing it for, I guess, what it is. So in your work, what do you see as the main issues contributing to a lack of intimacy with self and for those in a relationship? Because when we talk about being intimate with ourselves, I see that as having this sort of radical self-awareness as well as, you know, being aware of how you interact with others when you're in a relationship. So what do you see as the main issue contributing to that lack of intimacy with yourself and when you are in relationships?
I find what it is for a lot of people is they, like I talked about like a big piece around self-love, and a lot of people, they go into these like situations being so self-conscious of themselves because there's like judgments of themselves, there's guilt, shame, dogma of who they are. And what I really work with people is like actually coming home to themselves and their bodies and who they are and loving themselves. So when it's the intimacy with self, it's like, you know, there are a lot of people like, oh, but I do love myself. I was like, okay, well, tell me all the things that you do. And like, so one of the practices I love doing with people is actually having them, like getting them to a place where they feel comfortable. And one of my, actually, I should say one of my favorites was when I actually strip down and go, okay, this is what I love about my hair, my forehead, my eyebrows, my eyes. This is what works. This is what doesn't work. And like being present to another person. Like I've done this in the mirror before, and it was such a practice because I really heard how I speak about myself in the conscious and like unconsciously. Like some of it was really surprising because I'm like, wow, I really love myself in parts more, and other parts was like, wow, is that what I really think about my body and how I show up? So it's more of the connection to self. Like so much has been, I know how the way I learned about sex was through porn. I grew up very Catholic, conservative, you know, I'm ethnic. So my family, like we didn't talk about sex growing up. And I was a bit shy. And even though I talked to friends, like they were all learning through porn as well. So I learned how to be intimate with another partner through porn. And the porn industry doesn't really give the essence of how to communicate your desires and needs. And it's like, okay, well, this is how you have sex. A man penetrates you and you orgasm and he gets to do whatever he wants to you. And a lot of people learn that. And there's the nuances where some people aren't even ready to open up and they think that that's how it feels. And they say yes to something when really they mean no. So it's the first step is like learning what are your yeses and nos in the body and what does that feel like. And even simple things of like, it's when you can tune into yourself. So I like to use the 4 areas of like your mind, your heart, your gut, and your sex center, and tuning in and checking in. Hey, do I want to, you know, even if, do I want, is it in my higher self to drink this coffee? And my mind could be like, yes, but my gut could be like, oh, I don't feel very good. You know, I don't feel really good. And I don't think coffee is the right thing. Maybe I could have like a protein shake instead, or a green smoothie instead. Or like in the past, I've definitely overridden myself to go and connect with another person, like in a bar, or because I'm like, oh, he's attractive and he's sexy, and my sex center is like, yes, I'm turned on, and my gut is like, oh yeah, he's okay, and my heart's like, no, I don't know who this person is at all, and I don't feel safe. And the thing is, like, when we're able to attune to it, it's amazing. And I find when people don't, that's when it's like the hangover comes the next day of like, oh, what have I done? Like, and the stories come up because we aren't listening to our body. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I feel that a lot of self-worth is tied to previous or like past relationships, current relationships, or what you hold for the future in your relationships. And also self-worth really tied to the intimacy component. So I'd love to speak a little bit more on that as well. And also with, I guess, more about that self-intimacy, because I feel that a lot of women out there will be wondering how they can turn up the intimacy with their selves or in their lives if they're not in a relationship. Because when you hear that, like, we're doing a discussion about intimacy, some people may think, well, I'm not in a relationship, so it doesn't really apply until I have one. But you've just said it, really, that's not the truth. And the example you gave of doing that mirror work and standing there naked and being vulnerable with yourself and tuning into, you know, your heart and your gut and your sex center. Are there any other ways that women can maybe step into themselves completely and not feel feel shy about turning up the intimacy with themselves? And how do they actually do that? And also, how is that related to, you know, intimacy and your self-worth?
Oh my gosh, so much.
So much, sorry.
No, it's great. And like, I have such a, people think it's like, okay, intimacy with another person, how do I get that? And the first step is, how can you create deeper intimacy with yourself? Do you really know yourself? And how can you turn up? Like, oh my gosh, the first time I tried to seduce myself, like, I remember going, okay, like, let me try this and let me seduce myself. It was so awkward for me. And I was like, wow, if I can't do this with myself, how am I expecting to do this with another person? You know, getting really comfortable about who you are, how you show up, your desires, the way you look. That's so important. The first thing, if I was to recommend anything, is like to start connecting in with your body. Like, I love the slower pace things, and I think the body is so nuanced and it can be so sensitive. And sometimes we work in such a fast-paced world where a lot of people, like, I was in it. I was in the corporate space and I saw women go, yep, I can do this. And like, in the age where women can do anything as well as a man, it's like, yeah, achieve. Keep going. And what a lot of women I see have forgotten is to slow down, to actually appreciate themselves, to put themselves first. Like, a lot of people that I've worked with put their partners before them, put their children before them, put their work before them, put their pets before them. And so the thing is, like, how can you slow down? One of the practices, even just like slowly putting on like a playlist, putting on 5 minutes, maybe to 10 minutes to longer, to actually tune into, how does my body feel? And start, this is more of a self-pleasure practice. And when I say self-pleasure, it's not just masturbation. It's like, actually, what brings your body pleasure? And even the world of Tantra, people think of it as this sexual thing, but actually it's being present with the body and feeling the sensations. So starting to like touch your hands and close your eyes and feel your body, feel the sensations move through, and even slower. Like, and doing this, you can do this in bed naked and just feel every single part. And just, what does that feel like? What does it feel like to touch my collarbones? What does it feel like to touch in between my fingers? And like, there's different types of touch. Like, do I like hard touch? Do I like the soft? Do I like just when my fingers are rubbing? And it may feel awkward to start with, and you may notice yourself trying to rush it. And I invite people just to slow down in that, because what it is you're creating this intimacy and you're creating this like knowing of the body and deepening with your own self. to learn who you are. The first few times I ran this in, like I did this practice in a training of like 70 people. It wasn't my training, it was an NLP training actually. And I had 70 people, men and women, just like for about 10 minutes, just feeling their bodies. And so many people just came up to me saying that they'd never done that. It's not a common thing that like a lot of people are taught. And it is so important to really tune in. Like, how do my hips feel? How do my knees feel? Like, have you ever felt behind your knees, that area? Have you ever felt between your toes and felt the sensations? You'll notice that they're really sensitive. And the more that you can learn what feels good for you, the more you can, if you're in a partnership, then teach someone else how to touch you. There's those beautiful practices of slowing down and having breast massage and connecting with your heart. Even like the act of self-pleasure, and like if you're moving into that, sitting in front of a mirror and just like actually looking at your yoni while you're doing that and connecting in and just looking at her and connecting in and building that relationship. Like that's a step that feels really out there, but it's like really learning and just tuning into who you are and celebrating your body.
Absolutely, just accepting all of you. Every part of you, and really coming into your body, because that is how you build that deeper connection with yourself, which as we're saying, is intimacy. Really important before you can, I guess, even expect that from anybody else. Sort of build with yourself.
Totally. Like so much of the time we just expect our partners to know, or expect other people to know how to touch us, how to like hold us, how we like it, how we like to be like felt. And it's like, no, like the first step is actually like tuning in with how we want to be. Then we can share it with another person.
Absolutely. And so for those who are in relationships, but they know that it is completely lacking intimacy, what advice or tips do you have to spice up the intimacy in a relationship? Also considering that some people really lack confidence in initiating intimacy, even with their long-term partner, their husband or wife. I think that a lot of it comes down to confidence. And I know, like we've just mentioned, you said you gave a really beautiful tool there. Like if you can start with yourself, I guess that will start to build more confidence that you can bring into your intimate relationships. But sometimes there's still that like awkwardness of initiating it. How can a couple spice that up? Or even if like one side is not as open to intimacy?
My experience with that is everyone wants intimacy. Like people think that like everyone's like, I want to be more intimate and I want sex, but I'm not feeling it. And sometimes what I notice in the experience of couples is that there are different sexual desires and different ways that people get turned on. Who is it? It is Miss Jaya. There's a website, Miss Jaya, and she does erotic blueprints, and you can do this test for free. I would recommend that you and your partner, if you're in a relationship, do it, because people and the different types that she talks about are like sexual, energetic, there's kinky, there's another one that I can't think of right now. There's sensual, and there's a shapeshifter, which is kind of moving through all of it. And a lot of people think that it's like, okay, let's have sex and go straight into sexual. Some people really love the energetics first. So to get them tuned into their body, it's like slowing down and actually like, whispering in the ear or like moving energy through, and it's the slowness of it. And that's what gets them started and opening up. Like a lot of women come to me going, I don't want to have sex because I don't enjoy it. And actually it's just because in their partnerships, they go so fast. And some women, it takes them 40 minutes to orgasm and climax. And the thing is, like, for women's bodies to feel safe and open, it takes time. It can take time. And it's the trust piece. And even now, I still love, no matter how long I've been with a partner, if before they even enter me, for them to ask, I can be so aroused, so turned on, so wet, and it's still like my body then softens. There's a really great book there, Pussy by Regina Thomas Hewer as well, like for women that are wanting to explore that. I recommend that. Like I would have the conversations around erotic blueprints. There's also another one that I like doing with people. It's like a BDSM blueprint. And again, BDSM, people think of the whips, the chains, the leathers, but it's actually like everyone has kinks. Everyone has like, do they like to be more surrendered? Do they like to dominate? You know, and it doesn't mean that you're wearing the leathers and the masks. It's just, what are the preferences in the bedroom? And then like even knowing your 5 love languages. So they're kind of 3 things that I have people doing as a start. And we look at like, what comes up? What are the similarities? What are the differences? And starting to have conversations about that. Because a lot of the time people think that they know what it is to be intimate. And again, learning from porn, it's like, this is how it should be. But everyone is so different. Everyone's grown up different. Everyone really finds different things attractive. Their bodies respond differently. So being able to know that and open up conversations, I found people are like, all of a sudden they get to talk about, oh, this kink of like, I want this to happen to me in this place, or you know, I want you to put food on my body and eat it because I find that attractive or erotic. I want you to whisper in my ear with a blindfold on. Those get to be opened up. Like a lot of the times people think they're taboo and they may be judged, but opening up a really safe space where you can come together, and it's about deeper connection and exploration of possibilities.
Yeah, so that deepening of the intimacy really comes down to deepening the communication between the couples prior to touching each other, kissing each other, anything.
1,000%.
Yeah, having the conversations of what you like, what you don't like. And if you don't know, I guess experimenting with that partner and being confident enough to say, no, like that doesn't feel good, I don't like it, I'm not comfortable with that. Or, hey, are you open to trying this? And I think that is maybe the hardest step for a lot of people is to actually enter those conversations. Sometimes it's easier because of how, like what you've mentioned, the way we've been brought up around sex, is it's easier to not do any of the talking and just, you know, jump in the bed and go for it and see what works. And then there's that disconnect. There's not that like deeper intimate connection. And then I guess what you could experience sexually, it doesn't kind of reach there if there's not that deeper intimate moment. But I guess that also brings me to my next question, is that, you know, we're talking about how we can really build this beautiful connection in a relationship and how we can have greater intimacy. But what about women who are dating and are very happy and open to have a lot of like sexual relationships with people, but they're not in a committed relationship? Can they have that deeper connection? Can they have that deep intimate moment with people that they may be seeking outside of just quote unquote sex?
Absolutely. Like the way everyone experiences intimacy is so different. The desires of everyone are so different, and there's no like yucking anyone's yum, like what they find delicious and juicy and what they want. And anyone can experience intimacy, like depending on what your desires are and that those intimate connections. My experience is for depth and connection, there's got to be vulnerability, there's got to be an opening, there's got to be a willingness. And for people that desire like are very sexual in nature and want that sex, great. Like if you can communicate your desires, your needs, your wants, how to be pleasured, amazing. It's so possible. But I find it's over a longer period of time with people that your body will start to trust someone, so that there's like that deepening of intimacy. I used to be someone that would have kind of more casual things, and it was great. Like I was like, okay, I'm fulfilled because I feel this sense of desire in myself. And for myself personally, what I realized was that was a way that I found that I could be desired. So it was fulfilling this like unconscious need for me to be like, okay, I'm loved, okay, I'm desired, but not actually, like for me personally at that period of my life, I wasn't able to really stand in my knowing of what it is that I wanted, what it is that I wanted to feel. So I was accepting a lot of things and calling that intimacy. I think for people that are desiring like more sexual, great. Like if, again, it's coming back to knowing yourself so well and going, I can still have like experiences with people. However, it's like, can I speak to what I want? Can I be open to? Like if it's a mysterious one night stand in a hotel room, like in an elevator, great, because it's racy and it's sexy and that can be what you want. And also the longer term intimacy I find is over time, it's deepening, it's connecting, it's opening your heart, it's opening your sex center, it's opening like those 4 centers I talked about. It's like really being a full fuck yes, and really opening into knowing someone and feeling really safe to explore and try different things with them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would love to talk more about the polyamory versus monogamy relationships. I know you did a Instagram chat about this, and I was quite interested in opening this conversation up. So first of all, could you explain the difference between these terms?
Sure. So most people know the world of monogamy. It's that you have a partnership and that it's more of a closed relationship. It's one-on-one. This is our partnership. And the world of polyamory is more of there's an openness to having other partnerships or other relationships or other connections with people. And a lot of people are like, I've been in open relationships. I've been in like what they call polyamorous relationships, where I've had a few partners in one at the same time. And I remember when I started, I was still in my corporate job, and I was so afraid to tell my friends. Some of my friends are like, oh my goodness, I'm dating. And there was this thing in my gut going, is this who I am again? I grew up Catholic, conservative, Sri Lankan. So it's like, this is not a thing. And what I found was there's so much interest in that. Like in the world of polyamory, what my experience was being able to open up to explore love in a way that's big. For me, I was only sexual with people that I was in like partnerships with. So like where I built these relationships where, again, I felt safe and I felt really good, and it opened up and it blossomed. There's other people that have different partnerships and they connect and they're quite sexual and whatever. The thing is, like with any relationship, there are agreements in every single relationship. People think when they're in monogamous relationships that this is what we do, and there are a lot of covert agreements of like, we don't see other people, we don't do this, we don't do that. But even in monogamous relationships, there's still agreements of like, you know, I've worked with some people where they can go on like catch-ups with people of the opposite sex, and other couples where it's like, no, that's not okay.
Yeah.
So even in those relationships, there's agreements. It's no different in open relationships. It's more of a openness to exploring other things. So going into, like, in my experience, the best times I've had is when I've actually had foundations of agreements of like, hey, this is how I want to feel, and this is how we check in. I actually found being in open relationships, because the partners I had were very like, they had been in open relationships and they were like quite grounded in how they related with people. I found that I felt more safety in those relationships, because I was able to like actually talk about what I wanted. It actually forced me to talk about what I wanted and what I needed. And it also taught me how to love more. And I realized like I have such a big capacity to love. And even when I'm with people, like with my partner, it doesn't mean that the whole world shuts off. Like there's always people that I crush on or anything, and being able to talk about it. Like I don't have to act on it, but being able to have those conversations and being able to, you know, feel compersion for a partner being with someone else and hearing, I'm like, wow, you got to experience that with that person. One of my favorite things is shibari. And, you know, some of my partners have been really masterful. And then I've met other people and I've connected with them, but shibari isn't their thing. Like shibari is the Japanese art of rope tying, which, if like for me, being a woman that has so much control and so much structure in my life, like working so much, like I found that as a beautiful practice with someone that is excellent Shibari. Like it just had me soften and surrender in. Like it was such a beautiful practice. And so my desires have always been around being able to have everything that I want. So being able to be so solid and comfortable and transparent and honest and open that, you know, we can talk about anything. And like if someone wants to explore something with someone, there's a possibility. It's more in, again, communication and transparency. It's like that's what creates solid foundations for anything. So I'm talking about my relationships, but like in the world of polyamory, it's really, you're a relationship anarchist. Every relationship is different. I've just explained mine, and each person that you speak to that has open relationships will create different dynamics. I mean, we talked about intimacy before as like people think about it as sexually, and then I was explaining that I say that I go on dates with my friends, like, and there's nothing sexual in that. Intimacy is created physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and energetically. There can be intimacy. I had a lover in the past that lived in the States. We connected here and then they were in the States, and I still called them my lover because there was still love and there was still this emotional, deep emotional intimacy. And it didn't mean that we were sexual. So it's this, what is it that you're wanting to create? What is it that you're open to? Yeah.
Do you think if a couple starts off in a monogamous relationship and they've worked on building their intimacy over many years, and then one of them comes forward and says that they would love to try more of an open relationship, have you seen, can that sort of damage the intimacy that they have created with their current partner? If I guess it becomes a sticky situation when one is comfortable and wanting to try it and the other one isn't, because they feel that that is going to hinder their relationship.
I mean, I would firstly like work with and communicate, like, what is it that they're desiring from opening up? And if it's experience, great. Like what I find, excuse me, is that one person sometimes wants to try something and the other person doesn't. And what open relationships can bring up is like all of the insecurities, all the things that the stories that you've created, your limiting beliefs, your blockages in life. It's like a spotlight, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, this person that I'm so deeply connected with, again, like these covert agreements that they'll never leave me, they'll never do this, they'll never do that. It's like all of a sudden they're wanting to explore love. And again, like we have such a, like every single person has such a big capacity for love, or like connecting with people and going, there's actually people that I'm working with around this. And what I'm getting them to see is like, for them, it's like, actually, all of my stories around jealousy, not being good enough, not being lovable, not being worthy enough are coming up. And for them, it's that journey of like, actually, how can I love myself so deeply that that's the connection. It's also about creating these agreements with your partner around like how to feel safe and trust and like having this openness, because what is opening up bringing up for you? And you know, it's not for everyone, like, and that's okay. Like I've been in monogamous relationships, I've been in open relationships. Currently I'm not in a relationship, and like I've said to people, I'm like we'll say, like it's not like I'm like, yes, I'm only in open relationships. It's like you get to choose over and over again. So I think it's having the conversations about what is it that you're looking for. And like if someone is not wanting that, it's like, what is making you feel unsafe? Because generally that's what it is. There's a piece of unsafety or a piece of like, I'm not good enough. And again, it's those conversations and creating agreements that will keep people feeling safe. Yeah.
I guess just from a perspective of what I've seen in the past with people that I know is that the female may be like a little bit younger, or I guess trying to impress their partner, and they've, you know, wanted to have more of an open relationship. And so because she was scared of like losing her partner if she said no, and sort of that's not what she wanted, but she was very vulnerable and sort of, okay, we'll try it, and then felt a lot worse about the situation once that sort of opened up, and that actually played on her self-worth. I mean, she's in a beautiful, she's in a loving relationship now and moved on, but that essentially that relationship completely broke down, and I was supporting her as a friend, but it was because they had opened themselves up to this sort of open relationship, but it was never what she really wanted, and she didn't or couldn't communicate that. Or perhaps she just, I think maybe even when it started, like she didn't really go down that pathway, but he did. And then she felt worthless and not loved and not supported because he was having the relationship with her when he wanted it, but then also with other people when he wanted it as well. I guess just opening up sort of that conversation with people who are feeling more forced into that situation or doing it because they think it's going to save their relationship. I guess it comes back to the very basics of that communication and building a really strong foundation with the couple first and foremost before, you know, bringing other people in. Like what's your sort of point of view on that sort of situation?
Absolutely. Like if it's a case like that, like and it happens so often because these conversations aren't every day yet. But like, yet, because it's like, you know, we should be able to have a conversation about sex like a cup of coffee. Everyone loves having sex and exploring intimacy and wanting juicier sex, but it's taboo. And these conversations, like with your friend, I've worked with people like that, and what it is like there's the lack of self-worth piece, and it's like, oh well, I don't want to lose this person that I love, or I believe I love. And the thing is, if you're doing it for them, like it generally doesn't work, because like you've just said, like all of her stories, all of the things, all of the limiting beliefs come up. I'm not worthy, I'm not enough, I'm not this, I'm not that. And it's like, for her, like when I've worked with people like that, it's like actually building up like your worthiness and your self-love, and like hearing your yeses and nos, and hearing, hey, that doesn't feel good for me. Because what happens is, like in that experience, is like people override their no's and say yes. So what they're doing is building this, you know, the muscle of trust gets built up over time. Like when you say you're going to do something, you do it. And when you say yes to something where you mean a no, it's overriding that. And it's like it's almost the opposite effect of like, hey, I don't trust myself, I don't feel safe in myself. And instead of you actually growing and knowing yourself, it's like you externalize the feeling of safety. And when that's broken as well, so there's like a lack of trust within self, and then when there's a lack of trust within like external environments, it causes a lot of chaos and like deepening in and feeling a big disconnection from like the world and self. So what I come back to is like, actually, firstly, it's connecting with yourself. So even before the relationship, it's like, okay, what am I okay with and what am I not okay with? And again, these conversations, this is where it's so important. In any relationship, it's more like it gets brought up in spotlight in polyamorous relationships because there are other people and other emotions and things involved. But even in like monogamous relationships, these conversations are really important about, hey, what this is what makes me feel safe, and this is what makes me feel good. And even at a party, if we're not together in a monogamous relationship, I want to be checked. Like if we're in a monogamous relationship, I want to be checked on. Like, I don't mind you being around and talking to everyone, but you know, come and check in on me, and then you can go. And that makes me feel good. Same when I've been in open relationships, I've loved that same thing. But the other person is not going to know that unless I know that, unless I'm able to communicate that with them. A lot of the time, people want to make you feel good and want to make you feel like give you what you want. But first, it's like, are you able to know what you want and communicate that? And also, in the instance of your friend and their relationship, if that doesn't feel good and you're doing something again because of them, like, yeah, sure, you can try it out. And if it doesn't feel good, like that relationship isn't going to work, because long term, if someone gives up something for someone else, it causes resentment. So if that person that wanted to open up says, okay, no, I'll be closed, but they still have a desire to explore, there's going to be resentment on this person when they're like when it feels like things aren't fulfilled for them, and for the person that wants to remain in this close relationship, like there's going to be resentment if they open up. And like what your experience of your friend, like that's quite a common one.
Yeah.
So it's like both of them, they've got to come to an agreement, and whatever that is, that feels good for both of them.
I think it is a tricky one, especially if it hasn't been brought up really early on in the relationship, because they've built, you know, trust together and built their lives together. And then all of a sudden, when, you know, one of the partners brings it up that they want to have an open relationship or try other things with other people, then that person can potentially feel like what's wrong with me? Like, why aren't I, you know, good enough? Why aren't I seeing what's wrong with the relationship? And yeah, it's a whole whirlwind of things that can happen. But I also think maybe in today's times, I feel that people, it's harder for people to commit, because we're in such a society where it's like flick onto the next, especially with all of like the new age dating apps, Tinder. Like, I actually feel really, really grateful I've been in my relationship well before Tinder and that ever came out, because I've seen it with so many of my friends. It's like they're short bursts of relationships, and the minute it starts to get hard and rocky, they're like, oh, well, I'm out, back on Tinder. Like, there's plenty more, you know, plenty more people that I can pursue if it doesn't go exactly to how I want. There's not that sort of staying power and that proper open communication through the tough times, because it's all well and good to say, yes, open up and communicate, but when things are rocky and you've got to do that, and you're so used to just flicking that person to the side and getting back on the dating scene because that's what you do these days, it's not really helping people build a solid foundation for a relationship, because that commitment piece and that staying power and that working through difficult situations with your person is a bit of a missing link, I feel, in this new age. And yeah, I've just always been grateful that I didn't have to go through all of that Tinder sort of stuff and Facebook in your face all the time with different relationships. Yeah, do you have anything to say on that?
Oh man, like in the world of in the world of like fast paced, like, you know, just move through people, it's like no wonder there's so many stimulants around dating and let's move on to the next person, and everyone can fall in love. Like, you can choose to be in love at any moment with people. That's easy. It's the relationship and the commitment piece that takes work. Like, to keep a relationship, it's a choice every single day. Love is a choice every single day to be in this relationship with this person. Like, a lot of people go, I'm in a monogamous relationship, and they feel like they can trust, but it's like, actually, it's a choice to stay. It's a choice to choose love every day. It's a choice to come back to love, because when there are arguments, when there are disagreements, it's like, how is it that we work together? And that's such an important piece, because that's what creates this depth of connection, to know that, hey, this is how we go about life, and this is what we do, and this is how we come back. It's almost like from those disagreements, sometimes that's where so much more growth happens, because you can see, okay, this is the way we deal with hard situations, like uncomfortable situations, and coming back to work together as a unit. So again, it's like making sure that you have enough of, like, you're your own person, your partner's your own person, and then the relationship is its thing. So it's not you versus them. It's, hey, it's us and this relationship as an entity. So coming to know, like, okay, how can we work on this relationship every day? Yes. So it's an interesting one, with people going, okay, let me just flick through to the next person until I find the next thing. It's like, sometimes, like, in the world of relationships, you will continue to attract the exact thing that you've been triggered by until you actually work on whatever it is. It's, again, it's the energetics, and this is where it's the universal law. It's the energetics. Like, you will attract people that are alike for you. They'll bring up your shit, and you'll be like, oh, every relationship, I don't feel good enough. Every relationship, they want to open relate, or every relationship, whatever. And it's like, actually, it's not true. It's like, what's there for you to deal with first within yourself so that you can feel whole and complete by yourself. And then you can like actually have someone that's solid, that's whole and complete, so that you can come together and it's like an overflow. So I teach people like, how can you be an overflow with yourself first, rather than relying on someone to fill up your cup? What can you continue to be doing? Because if you continue to go, okay, on to the next one, on to the next one, on to the next one, you'll keep attracting these people that don't feel good for you. And you'll keep feeling like, no, I'm not good enough. No, I'm not worthy enough. No, I'm not lovable. It's like, no, that's not true. It's just the muscles and the energetics and your inner knowing of like who you're attracting into your world. And it starts with you first.
Absolutely.
Mm.
So to wrap it up, I'd love, I guess if we've got listeners out there who are going, okay, I would love to turn up the intimacy with my relationship, but I'm feeling a little bit awkward of how to start that conversation with my partner or what to do, what advice would you give them?
Firstly, it's like having those conversations about what you love, what you desire. You can easily do the tests, and even dropping into a conversation with someone can feel awkward, but saying, hey, I want to create more intimacy with you. Do you have the time and space? This is what I'm desiring more of. This is what I would love to do. And like starting to open up the conversations, because you'd be surprised. People think they know their partners. And a lot of the time it's like they have no idea what their desires are, because they just keep going and going and going. In partnerships I sometimes create like ritual spaces where it's like, actually we'll turn everything off and we'll create a space where we can just breathe together for a few seconds. Like we'll hold and breathe together and create this connection, or gaze into each other's eyes and drop in. And I use Blue Lotus. I don't know if you've ever heard of Blue Lotus, the oils and the teas, and to use to like drop in and soften. Like it's one of the product-based things that I use now and promote and sell. And I've found that to drop people into their bodies, you know, and talking about, if it feels uncomfortable, say, hey, this feels uncomfortable for me to actually talk about this. Be a human. Like you're allowed to be human, and you're allowed to feel uncomfortable, and you're allowed to be awkward, and just like know that it can be a vulnerable conversation, and you're opening up your heart and you're opening yourself up to be seen. And it's for the purpose of creating deeper connection and like to be able to drop in, because that's what you're wanting. You know, the conversation isn't annoying, isn't silly. It's like, hey, this is what I really want. You know, if it's to be, some people with the 5 love languages, like, hey, what would really make me feel supported and trust is like, if you help me clean up the kitchen before we go into the bedroom, because I want the kitchen cleaned before. Like it makes me feel really like turned on when like it's really, this sounds silly, but it's like, if you could take out the rubbish to the bit like outside, and then, you know, come over and like hold me and whisper beautiful things in my ears of what you love of me. You know, before we, like while we're in bed, I just want you to like be on top of me and just look into my eyes and really slow down. Kiss me on the neck and like be really slow. Even sometimes like create a space where you don't have penetration. If you're in a heterosexual couple, like don't penetrate like in that intimate setting, and see how much pleasure you can have without being penetrated. When you take that out, like what else can you do? And like really create a space where you can explore each other.
And I think for some people, the intimacy that they want in their relationships, not always just in the bedroom, they just may want to work on it, as in holding hands when they're out, or just cuddling, like just not taking it to that you know level of bedroom sex.
Totally.
It's
totally
just those little small intimate moments where, you know, they brush past them, they sit next to them on the couch but a little bit closer, they're holding each other's hands when they're, you know, walking down the beach or whatever that might be. A lot of people are just lacking those sort of basic connection and touch points and intimate times in their relationship. So maybe it's just about starting simple, and
so simple.
if it is lacking, maybe you having, like, after listening to this, just having the confidence within yourself to reach out and grab your partner's hand, or come forward with that sort of intimate connection first, instead of always expecting it to come to you. Because, and then being like, oh, you know, we're never intimate and he never touches me, he never does this. I mean, maybe reaching out to him or her or whoever your partner is, and then explaining, like, you know, I really love just holding your hand, it makes me feel good, or I would love to do more of this.
Yeah, actually, thank you for bringing that up, because that's such an important piece. Like, if you are desiring something like holding hands, like, explain to them what it makes you feel, because people will resonate with you in that way. It's like, hey, like, I want you to look at me, I want you to say something beautiful to me, and because it makes me feel really safe, it makes me feel really good. Like, grab their hand and give them a kiss, and then continue holding it and continue walking. You know, being able to, yeah, there's so many different ways that you can just slow down the intimacy. One of the things I loved is, in my relationships, every day I treat it as if I'm still courting the person. So even though I may have been with someone for a long period of time, every day treating them as, like, seeing them brand new. Like, can you open your eyes and see them as like this brand new person, of like, how can I love this person more? What else can I give? And like, having that same thing happen. It's like, how can I appreciate this person more, and how can I love this person? And what is it that how do they love to be loved?
Yeah, absolutely. And so important in relationships. Like, I know from on my side, I actually need to work more on accepting the intimacy. My partner is very loving. Like, he would love to hold hands and touch and cuddle 24/7. And sometimes I'm just like, oh, get off me. Like, you know, I'm like the one that sort of, I guess, in our relationship, that needs to be more working on accepting that intimacy, because it does bring you closer. It is a really beautiful feeling. And I think the reason that, you know, sometimes I'm brushing it off is because you're right. Like, I'm in that sort of not rush mode, like not taking things slow and just enjoying that little fleeting moment, like staying a little bit longer for a hug instead of going, yep, okay, bye. You know, like, just really, yeah, sitting back and enjoying the people in your life and those intimate connections, because we never know how long they're going to last for. How long they're going to be around, and they're the most precious memories and feelings that you're ever going to get with another human being. So I think I have come to the realization that I need to be more open to accepting those small intimate moments, instead of just always brushing past them in fleeting moments.
I mean, also, if you haven't already, like, check out do you know what your love languages are?
Acts of service. Yeah.
So for you, it's like, how can this person, like, do an act of service for you? So there's differences as well, because even with the 5 love languages, it's like, what is it that you love receiving versus what is it that you love giving in that?
Yeah.
So it's like,
we have spoke about our love languages, and I think mine receiving more acts of service. And what are the other ones? There's
acts of service, touch, words of affirmation, quality time, and gifts. So sometimes
time is the other one.
So in that, it's like, okay, this is how you want to receive love. And it's like, then having the conversation of like, how does he want to receive love? That's a whole different thing. And like, a lot of the times it's like, sometimes it can be non-matching. And that's where it's like, oh, well, I don't feel love being touched, for instance. And going, how can you allow yourself to soften in to like receive that from him? Because maybe that's the way he feels like giving you touch is wanting to love you in that way.
And that's being part of in a partnership, because his love language is touch, and then it would be the compliments, like expressing love by saying I love you all the time, whereas I don't need that as much. And mine are, like you said, very opposite. So it is about being able to to honor both. And that's part of being in a relationship, doing selfless, well, is it called selfless service? That's probably not the right word, but selfless service of touching and loving and compliments, because you know that that makes your partner light up and makes them feel heard and seen and loved and valued. And that's how you want them to feel. So even if it's not, I guess, yeah, what you need, but it's what they need.
And it's like, that's where speaking about your desires, your needs, your wants is so important, because like if you didn't have that conversation, it's like, no, stop touching me. Like I want you to, you know, clean up the kitchen or make me dinner. That's what makes me feel loved. Yeah, that's what makes me feel loved. And until he knows that, because he's like, oh yeah, I'll make you dinner, like, and it's a nothing, it could be a nothing thing for him, but for you it's like, oh my God, I feel so loved. Whereas for him it's like, can you come and give me a massage and tell me what you love about me? Is like, oh, that would light his heart up. It's these conversations of like with couples and with people, it's like, again, knowing yourself and then being able to have open conversations and go, okay, how can I love you in this way? And then consciously, if you're desiring to create this depth and intimacy, going, how can I bring more touch into your life? Like, is it just a little having my hand give you a massage while we drive the car? Would that feel nice? And asking them and tuning in. So many beautiful places to be and to create and to start. So thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I do want to wrap it up because I'm very cautious of your time, but I think just because we've just spoken about the 5 love languages, and someone listening may not have heard of those before, and I do think they're really important to discuss in a relationship and to understand what your love language is. So could we just briefly go over the 5, what they are, so that our listeners can maybe pick up, that's definitely me, or I need to express that to my husband because I've just realized that's my love language, or obviously that's his, that's why he's always doing that, or their female partner, their wife, whether you're in a heterosexual or bisexual or
all of the different types of relationships,
sexual relationships, whoever it may be, but you can pick up on, we all have our own love languages, and one of our listeners might be wanting to hear those. So I'd love for you to go over.
Yeah, absolutely. So the 5 different love languages, so they can include, one of them is touch. So for instance, I'm very kinesthetic. I love being touched. If you were to give me a massage or touch, like slowly graze past me, or, you know, give me a hug, that makes me feel really loved. Someone coming close to me. There's other ones of words of affirmation. So someone being told, hey, I really appreciate you. I love when you do this. When they do anything, or just like tell them what you appreciate, what you love, what you value, and what you see in them, that can make them feel really loved. Then there are acts of service. So things like helping you with the car, helping you do the washing and put things out, like making dinner, cleaning up, like that can make you, like, people feel really loved because it's doing something for someone else. It's like, hey, I brought, like, to try and make your life easier, I brought the washing in for you. What else? Quality time. So spending time together on activities, like consciously going out to be, like even a phone call, it might be like an hour phone call. Some people think that, like, and being like really quality and spending the time and being really present with someone else. So in partnerships I've had before, when we've had phone calls, 10 minutes was all they wanted. For me, I wanted the longer, the half an hour, the hour time. And I had to express, like, hey, I really, like, 5 minutes on a call isn't enough for me. I want longer time on there. What else? Gifts. So gifting, seeing something that you love, or seeing, like, people feel like when they receive gifts, it's like, oh, they've thought of me, they've bought me something that makes me feel really loved and good because they're thinking of me when they're going out. So different people have different love languages, and some people, like, I love all of them, but predominantly I'm like, for me to feel loved, it's the touch and the words of affirmation. And like, what I found unconsciously is sometimes when I'm loving on someone else, what I give to people is acts of service. And this can come up because of the way you've been loved as you've grown up. Like I realized, I was like, why did I just clean their bathroom and their whole kitchen? I don't even like cleaning my own bathroom and kitchen. And then I was having a think and I was like, actually, when I was growing up, that's how like my dad showed me love. So even the most, we would have crazy arguments and get into big arguments. And no matter what, like I would go to him and be, Dad, hey, my car's not working. Can you help me? And he would drop everything. We would drop being angry and he would, you know, come out. And that's the way he shows me love, by taking his time to do things for me and help me. So as well as like having your own ways of receiving, you can also love giving in different ways. So it's being aware of that. And then for you knowing that, and then having the conversation of your partner knowing, how does it make you feel? And you can go through with them because they might not know. There's a free test that you can do, the 5 love languages. But also having that open conversation of like, how does each one make you feel? Like if I did this for you, how would you feel? And you could try it out and test it out and see what drops people in.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing all of that. I think, yeah, it is really important to know because it's just part of that whole self-awareness journey, and then being able to experience it with your partner. And sometimes it just helps you understand the other person in the relationship better as well as yourself, so that you can have more of a harmonious relationship. But thank you so much. So where can our listeners find you if they want help with turning on their intimacy with themselves or in their relationships?
You can absolutely find me on Instagram. That's probably the best place. I feel like sometimes Facebook, you can find me on Facebook, but Instagram is probably the best, Ranetha.Perera. Or you can contact me through my website, ranethaperera.com. Also, I'll be running different events and different programs, different workshops. We've got one called the Art of Intimacy coming. So that's working with the Blue Lotus medicine to drop people in, because it can be used as such a heart opener. And so it's about being able to drop into what your desires are, and giving and receiving, and being able to receive what your desires are in a really safe space, and listening and being able to be attuned to your yeses and nos in your body, and being able to be in states of pleasure where it's like, oh, that feels so good to receive. And then, yeah, I do one-on-one coaching as well as group coaching.
Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you sharing all of your stories as well, and just being really open with us there, and all of the beautiful wisdom that you've shared with us all. And hopefully that this episode has helped someone out there turn up the intimacy for themselves, and even be confident enough to speak up in their relationship about what they want and how they want it.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And again, if anyone has any questions or anything, please just send me a message. I'm so open to having the conversation with you. And if there's anything that you're like, whoa, that was a lot, message me. I would love to hear what's coming up and how things go, and if you try out any of these practices.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.